Your bank has a hidden playbook, and you're not part of it. Have you ever noticed how wealthy clients seem to get everything for free, while you're hit with a $35 fee just because your paycheck arrived a couple hours late? That's not random. That's how the system is built. Today, I'm going to break down the 3 net worth tiers, where banks completely change how they treat you, explain the numbers behind each level, and show you why the system is structured to keep you exactly where you are. Let's dive in. Here's something you'll never hear in a bank ad. 80% of overdraft fee revenue comes from just 9% of customers. Just 9%. That's not customer service. That's precision extraction. In 2024 alone, banks pulled in $12.1 billion in overdraft fees. Billion, with a B. And most of that money came from people who could afford it the least. Meanwhile, if you've got $1 million in the bank, the experience flips completely. You get a dedicated banker, no fees, and access to low-interest loans around 4% to finance things like a yacht. Same bank, same building, completely different treatment. Let's break it down. Tier 1, under $30,000 net worth. I call this the struggle tier. This is where banks make the highest profit per customer. And if that seems backwards, that's because it is. And it's by design. The average transaction that triggers an overdraft fee? Just $24. You bought lunch, but your paycheck hadn't cleared yet. That small mistake? It ends up costing you an average of $278 in fees. You literally paid more in penalties than the meal itself. Now, here's the part that should really get your attention. A 3-day overdraft on a $24 purchase translates to an effective APR of over 16,000%. Yes, 16,000%. At that rate, even loan sharks would raise an eyebrow. Last year, 34% of households earning under $65,000 were hit with overdraft fees. For those making over $175,000, just 10%. The less money you have, the more you're charged. That's not accidental. That's the system doing exactly what it was built to do. And overdraft fees are just the beginning. Let's talk about the rest of the product lineup aimed at this group, starting with payday loans. They're advertised as quick emergency cash, but in reality, they're closer to financial quicksand. The average payday loan carries an APR between 391% and 400%. Borrow $375, and you'll typically pay over $520 in fees. Only 14% of borrowers can repay on time, which means most people end up rolling the loan over again and again. In fact, 1 out of 4 payday loans gets rolled over 9 or more times. That $500 emergency? It can spiral into $2,000 of debt in just a few months. Auto loans aren't much better. If your credit score is under 600, you're looking at interest rates between 15% and 21% on a used car. Compare that to 5 to 7% for someone with good credit. On a $30,000 loan, that's the difference between roughly $4,000 in interest versus nearly $13,000. That's a $9,000 penalty for having less. Then there are store credit cards. Save 15% today. Sounds great, until you see the fine print. The average APR is around 30.14%, and 90% of these cards cap out above 30%. Miss a single payment on a deferred interest promo, and suddenly, you're charged retroactive interest on the full original balance. No warning, just a bill. The long-term impact stacks up fast. Being unbanked can cost around $3,000 a year in fees from check cashing, prepaid cards, and money orders. Over 30 years, that's $90,000 gone, and closer to $300,000 in lost wealth if that money had been invested instead. You're effectively paying a poverty tax just to access your own money. Now, let's move to Tier 2, net worth between $30,000 and $1 million. This is the middle class upgrade. But don't expect a dramatic shift. Banks just become slightly less aggressive. You'll start seeing programs with polished names like Preferred Rewards or Priority Banking. Sounds impressive, right? Let's break down what that actually means. Take Bank of America's Preferred Rewards program. It starts at $20,000 in combined balances, giving you gold status. And what do you get? A 25% boost on credit card rewards and about $200 off mortgage fees. So if your cashback rate was 1.5%, now it's 1.875%. Game-changing, right? At $50,000, you reach platinum status. Now your rewards bonus jumps to 50%. At $100,000, Platinum Honors bumps that to 75%, turning a 1.5% cashback card into 2.625%. That's actually meaningful if your spending is high enough. At $150,000, programs like Chase Private Client come into play. You get a dedicated banker, free global ATM access, and about a 0.25% discount on auto loans. Citigold starts at $200,000, adding a wealth advisor and perks like museum access. Wells Fargo Premier? That's a $250,000 minimum just to qualify for better mortgage pricing. But here's the part no one highlights. Keeping $50,000 sitting in a Bank of America account earning 0.01% APY instead of a high-yield savings account at 4% costs you roughly $2,000 a year in lost interest. In many cases, that wipes out or exceeds the value of the perks entirely. You're effectively paying to be treated like a preferred customer. And then there's the credit card reward system. It's often framed as a benefit, but in reality, it functions as a wealth transfer mechanism. According to Federal Reserve research, rewards programs shift about $15.1 billion every year from lower credit consumers to higher credit ones. People with credit scores above 780 earn around $950 annually in rewards and save roughly $710 in interest. Meanwhile, subprime borrowers earn about $180, but pay $640 more in interest. The game isn't balanced. The house always wins, and in this case, the house is the bank. Mortgage access follows a similar pattern. The overall approval rate sits around 81%, but the breakdown tells a different story. Black applicants face a 21% denial rate, Hispanic applicants 17%, and white applicants 11%. Same income, different outcomes. Even the relationship-based discounts that actually matter, like shaving 0.125% to 0.375% off HELOC rates, require maintaining $20,000 to $100,000 in balances. Most people simply can't afford to park that kind of cash earning next to nothing, which means the most meaningful benefits remain out of reach. Now let's move to Tier 3, over $1 million in net worth. This is where banking becomes a completely different game. At $1 million, Citigold Private Client gives you a dedicated wealth management team, a World Elite MasterCard debit card with hotel upgrades and concierge services, plus around $400 in annual subscription credits. Nice perks, but that's still just the surface. True private banking operates in an entirely different league. JP Morgan. Private bank requires a $10 million minimum. Goldman Sachs Private Wealth, also $10 million. Morgan Stanley Private Wealth starts at $5 million. Bank of America Private Bank, again, $10 million. At this level, you gain access to financial tools and strategies most people don't even realize exist. Now we get into something most people have never even heard of: securities-based lending. This means borrowing against your investment portfolio without selling your assets. No selling means no capital gains taxes. You keep your positions intact, use them as collateral, and access cash at rates around 4 to 6%. This market alone is worth about $138 billion. Compare that to everyone else. Personal loans at 9 to 11%. Credit cards at 12 to 16%. The wealthy are borrowing at half the cost, or less. And this is what enables a strategy financial advisors literally call buy, borrow, die. Here's how it works. Step 1. Buy appreciating assets. Stocks, real estate, anything that grows in value. You don't pay taxes unless you sell. Step 2. Borrow against those assets at low interest rates. Since borrowed money isn't considered income, it's not taxed. Step 3. Die. When your heirs inherit the assets, they receive what's called a stepped-up basis. That means all the capital gains accumulated during your lifetime are wiped out. The assets reset to current market value, and they can be sold immediately, owing zero capital gains tax. So you lived off borrowed money, never sold your assets, never paid taxes on the gains, and passed everything on tax-free. That's not a loophole. That's the system functioning exactly as intended, for those who can afford to navigate it. Then there's investment access. To qualify as an SEC accredited investor, the gateway to hedge funds, private equity, and pre-IPO deals, you need either $1 million in net worth or $200,000 in annual income. Only about 14.8% of U.S. households meet that threshold, but they control nearly 78.7% of private wealth, and the opportunities they get access to are on a completely different level. Hedge funds typically require minimums ranging from $100,000 to $10 million. Private equity funds start around $250,000 and can go up to $25 million. Meanwhile, the average company now stays private for about 10.7 years before going public, compared to 6.9 years back in the 2000s. In other words, most of the explosive growth happens before the public ever gets a chance to invest. By the time shares hit the stock market, a large portion of the upside is already gone. So it's not just about better service. The wealthy operate with access to entirely different financial instruments, different rules, and different opportunities. And when you look at who ends up in each tier, it becomes clear this isn't random. For many people, placement in these tiers is heavily shaped long before they ever open a bank account. The median net worth tells the story clearly. White families, $285,000. Asian families, $536,000. Hispanic families, $61,600. Black families, $44,900. That means the median black household holds just 15% of the wealth of the median white household. 15%. And this gap translates directly into banking access. Roughly 20% of white households have reached millionaire status, unlocking private banking. For black households, that number is closer to 5%. On the other end, about 10.6% of black households are completely unbanked, compared to just 1.9% of white households, a gap of more than 5 times. Here's where it gets even more frustrating. Between 2019 and 2022, black median wealth grew by 61%, while white median wealth grew by 31%. That sounds like progress, but because the starting points were so different, the actual dollar gap widened by about $50,000. The ratio improved. The reality got worse. Today, white families make up 66% of households, but hold 84% of total U.S. wealth. Black families make up 11.4% of households, but hold just 3.4% of the wealth. These tiers aren't just about money. They determine who gets to build wealth and who has wealth extracted from them. Now look at the lifetime math. Take 2 people earning the same $50,000 income. One has a $20,000 emergency cushion and a 750 credit score. The other lives paycheck to paycheck with a 620 score. The second person ends up paying every year $210 in overdraft fees, $144 in account maintenance fees, $1,500 extra on auto loan interest, $120 more in credit card interest, $60 in out-of-network ATM fees. That's over $2,300 annually, just to stay in the same financial position. Over 30 years, that adds up to about $70,000 in direct costs and roughly $200,000 in lost investment potential. That's a $270,000 lifetime disadvantage. Same income, completely different trajectory. The person with the cushion builds credit, qualifies for better products, and eventually reaches premium banking tiers with lower costs and better rates. The person without it pays fees that make building that cushion nearly impossible. It's a loop designed to look like a service. That $12.1 billion collected annually in overdraft fees, it helps fund the free banking perks offered to wealthier clients. In effect, lower-tier customers are subsidizing the experience of higher-tier ones. So what can you actually do? First, understand the thresholds. Around $150,000 can unlock programs like Chase Private Client. Around $100,000 gets you Bank of America Platinum Honors. These benefits can be real, but only if you're not sacrificing better returns elsewhere. Always run the numbers. Second, consider credit unions. They're member-owned nonprofit institutions that typically offer lower fees and more reasonable rates. Not perfect, but structurally different. Third, avoid payday loans entirely. A 400% APR isn't a solution. It's a trap. If you're in a tight spot, almost any alternative is better. Negotiating payments, selling assets, or borrowing from someone you trust. Fourth, build a financial cushion. Even $1,000 can fundamentally change how you interact with the system. It reduces your exposure to overdraft fees and removes the need for short-term high-interest debt. The system penalizes you for not having a buffer, which is exactly why building one matters. Fifth, audit your rates regularly. Credit cards, car loans, mortgages, everything. If your credit profile has improved, you may qualify for better terms. But no bank is going to volunteer that information. You have to push for it. At the end of the day, the system operates in 3 tiers because that's how it maximizes profit. The lowest tier pays the most in fees. The middle tier gets partial perks while still subsidizing the system. And the top tier gets the best rates, the lowest costs, and the most powerful wealth-building tools. Once you recognize the structure, you start to see it everywhere. And once you understand the math, you can begin making moves to shift where you sit within it.